through 5 weeks, we need to start taking stock of what certain players' dynasty value is, right? Obviously, we have seen a lot through the first 5 weeks here. So that means there are going to be a number of players that are either flying up our dynasty ranks or even, plummeting down further. It's going to be guys we haven't talked a ton about, I think, to this point in the season. So let's dive into Dynasty Stock Watch heading into week 6. To kick it off, there's no bigger player, I think, right now that has probably seen the biggest jump in value other than Puka Nacua. So we have to talk about him. What he has done to this point is historic. I mean, it is arguably the greatest start to a rookie career of all time. He currently leads the NFL in targets. He puts up a 29.7% target share with Cooper Kupp back in the lineup, who also looked fantastic and is also back to being a superstar. So I don't think there's any concern. I think that was the big question everybody had, is when Cooper Kupp comes back, what does it mean for Puka? Well, it means he's still the 1B, right? I think Cooper Kupp is going to continue to be the 1A, but the 1B, that is a guy who can finish as a top 12 wide receiver. And we saw this with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods for several seasons. They're both going to dominate. They're both going to get theirs. And considering this is Dynasty, Cooper Kupp's going to be a year older next season, right? Puka is just going to get better. At least that's the expectation at this point. So Puka Nacua goes from a guy that was being drafted as wide receiver 72 in September startup ADP. So I think he should be a top 12 wide receiver. Like, I am fine putting him there because no player has ever done what he has done up to this point. And I'm going to continue to just believe this is legitimate, right? We made this same mistake with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who really did it at the back half of the year. He did not come out guns blazing like Puka has. So he is a top 12 wide receiver moving forward and the rookie wide receiver 1 from the 2023 class. Sticking at the wide receiver position, we have to talk about Brandon Aiyuk as well. Brandon Aiyuk finally seems to be turning into the player we've kind of expected, we've paid up for over the last couple of years. He is having that true breakout season that we've just been kind of waiting for. We knew it was possible. It just took a quarterback to kind of make it happen, right? Jimmy G is solid. Jimmy G has served his role in San Francisco. Brock Purdy is basically a souped up version of Jimmy G, right? Brock Purdy has done everything that has been asked of him. He has looked fantastic, and his ability to kind of pinpoint the ball further down the field has led to Brandon Aiyuk finally having a breakout season. He's also leaning on Brandon Aiyuk like we have not seen previously. He's finished as a top 10 wide receiver twice in 4 games, and again, right, he missed week 3. That's why there's only 4 there. And then on top of that, he has a 27% target share. Even in a low volume offense, it is leading to massive output because Brandon Aiyuk has shown he's an elite route runner. It is finally coming through. This is what we talk about when we say by talent, situation will come. Brandon Aiyuk is the perfect guy for this, I think. I don't know if they have the money to pay him, to be perfectly honest, but wherever he ends up landing, right, if he gets traded at the end of this season, he is going to be an absolute problem with his next team because we've seen the talent flash at this point. It is a guy that can be a top 12 wide receiver basically any given week, and if you get him a more dynamic quarterback in an offense that is willing to pass more or has to pass more, then Brandon Aiyuk could even reach, top 5 levels. He was being drafted as a wide receiver 22 back in September. I think at this point you have to put him as a borderline top 15 wide receiver, if not inside of that top 15. He is quickly ascending, and if you bought low over the last couple of years, it's been a long wait, but it's finally starting to pay off. Now, not everybody has been good. Not everybody has gained value. So let's talk about a trio of quarterbacks that I think at this point are just cratering down dynasty rankings. That's going to be Daniel Jones, Kenny Pickett, and Mac Jones. All 3 of them, through the first 5 weeks of the season, have taken massive hits to their fantasy value because I think what we're seeing is everybody starting to realize these are not good quarterbacks. At least they're not showing much on tape to give us hope that they could be good. I think that's a better way to put this because guys develop. But right now, what we have seen, right, from Daniel Jones, who just signed a massive extension and was previously being drafted as the quarterback 15, we've just seen nothing. And yes, the offensive line is bad, and the receivers are terrible, and Darren Waller isn't what we thought he was. But Daniel Jones just does not pass the eye test in any scenario. So, I mean, he's not a top 15 quarterback. I think we're learning that. I mean, you should have known that, but here we are. When you look at Kenny Pickett, again, he was going off the board as QB20. The breakout for Kenny Pickett has not happened. And he leads a nice drive this week against Baltimore to get the win. He did that a few times to close the season last year as well. But you're just not seeing what you want. You're not seeing growth. You're not seeing progression. The breakout people predicted in the preseason has just not shown itself on tape yet. And yes, like Matt Canada's still there. And Matt Canada might be the worst play caller I have ever seen. So if Matt Canada gets canned, hopefully when he gets canned midseason, we may see a jump from Kenny Pickett. But until we can get to that point, I think Kenny Pickett cannot be drafted as a QB2. He should not be inside the top 24 quarterbacks, because if he continues to struggle, there is a real chance, there's a real opportunity. He's just not the guy moving forward, even in 2024. And then, like I said, the other one here is Mac Jones, who was already being drafted as the QB 27. But at this point, he's probably outside the top 32 quarterbacks. He's technically a starter, but he's been benched twice because of massive blowouts the last 2 weeks. Mac Jones is not good. I think a lot of us knew that coming in. At this point, it's just become painfully obvious he is not the guy. The Patriots look like they're on the fast track for a top 5 pick, which, depending where they land, could be Drake May territory, could be Shedeur Sanders if they buy in and he gets that kind of hype come draft season. It's just not it. Mac Jones is not going to be the guy. I'm fine saying that. If I can trade him for basically anything, I'm going to do it, because his time is over. I think you see Bailey Zappi before the end of the season. Moving over to the running back position, we do have a guy I'm excited to talk about here. I didn't think I would be this season, but it's DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is showing us the talent that I think a lot of us knew was there, right? If you watched the video heading into week 2 of 5 moves to make, I was skeptical. I was down on DeAndre Swift. Obviously, he gets out-touched, out-produced by Kenny Gainwell. At some point, we got to say, okay, we're wrong on DeAndre Swift, most likely. I'm not 100% there, but I'm real damn close. But then Gainwell goes down, and everything has changed for DeAndre Swift moving forward. Over the last 4 weeks, he has been a top 15 running back all 4 weeks, including 3 top 12 finishes, 3 RB1 finishes. That means he's just been an absolute monster. He has been everything we wanted him to be in Detroit. At this point, for a guy that was being drafted as the RB27 in startups in September, that looks like a massive discount. He needs to be inside of the top 20 running backs. He's still only 24 years old, and I mean, look at some of the guys going ahead of him, or that were going ahead of him, that he should easily jump right. I mean, you're looking at Najee Harris, Rashad White, Damian Pierce, Alexander Madison, Cam Akers, Miles Sanders. Aaron Jones is probably on the borderline, but I think age is starting to get to him, at least with the injuries here. So DeAndre Swift is going to jump several rounds in ADP. He has jumped multiple leaps and bounds, tier-wise, value-wise, all of it. DeAndre Swift is turning into the guy we expected. It just unfortunately took like 4 years for us to get, true superstar usage. And to close us out, we have to talk about Rhamondre Stevenson, because Rhamondre Stevenson is not an RB1. At least right now, you can't say he is. And that's what he was being drafted as in September. He was coming off the board as RB11. And, I mean, we're looking at 3 straight games outside of the top 30. 0 games over 3.5 yards per carry. And I get, like, yards per carry is usually a pretty shitty metric to use. But 3.5 is below the baseline of what should be acceptable. So I'm going to use it here, right? Not a single game this season. And the run blocking, at least per PFF, really hasn't changed from last year. It's essentially getting graded out identical for the most part. So really confusing to understand what is happening here, right? The schedule hasn't been friendly. It hasn't been impossible. It's not like he ran into Tennessee for 5 straight weeks. Snap share has fallen to a low this season in week 5, which is 50%. Zeke's snap share has risen each week, so he's become more acclimated into this offense. And Rhamondre Stevenson appears to be, not necessarily struggling, but suffering from a fantasy perspective because of it. The good news, or some of the hope, is the schedule the rest of the way looks probably as good as it can possibly be for a fantasy running back. Now, that doesn't mean everything's going to turn around, right? Because he's losing touches. He is losing snaps on the field. But with a softer schedule, I think Rhamondre Stevenson ends up being an interesting buy low, just because I think the talent is there, right? I don't think he suddenly forgot how to be a good running back. That would just be shocking. So I think Rhamondre Stevenson is an interesting guy to buy low on, but only if I'm getting at like low RB2 prices, because I think we all have some concerns that even if I'm going to buy low, everything you laid out is not necessarily a positive for him. So I think that's what you need to be careful of. If you can get him at the right price, Rhamondre is an interesting buy low at this point in the season. All right, guys, that is all we have for you. Again, if you like what we are doing here, drop questions, drop comments. If you want to see more of this kind of content, check out the DLF YouTube membership as well underneath that bonus content tier. As always, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.